You can write them in where I write the problems and use that on your note sheet, but you definitely want to have separate notes so you can just scan through your definitions. Okay, so again, we're dealing with graphs, and this is the area that is called statistics. Statistics, dealing with graphs. Okay, so when we're dealing with statistics, we're reading information. We have data input, there's numbers, there's quantities, and they all come out to a result. So I want you to be able to read a graph and know what the lines are called and be able to look for the right information to determine what the graph is actually showing you. So on most graphs, you're going to have a line this way and one this way. It's called the axis. This vertical line is your y-axis, and this horizontal line is your x-axis. The axis is just where the two lines meet. So that's the definition of an axis, if you want to write that down, where two lines meet. Vertical is the y-axis, horizontal is the x-axis. All right, so what you're doing is interpreting numbers. And most of the time, a graph is going to have some input, some data input, and that's the information you're looking for. So I'm going to create an example for you of a graph, and I'm going to show you how to read it. All right, so let's say, and you know what, I'm going to erase just a second because I got to create some more space. I want to make this a little bit bigger, just so you can read and have room to write all the information that we're going to need. So remember, this down here is the x-axis. I'm going to put some numbers in here. So here we're starting at 0. And most graphs will not take time to go 1, 2, 3. I'm sorry, and hang on. There we go. We're not going in single numbers. We're going up by twos. So 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, and 12. All right, so far we just have some numbers over here. We know that we're measuring something. And then down across the bottom, I'm going to put some months. All right, so here on the x-axis, we have months, and they're all going in order. January, February, March, April, May. And here on the y-axis, we have some values, some number values. So I'm going to start to plot some points. And let's say here at January, our number came up to 3. Here in February, make that right about there. March, April, and May. Good, so what do these numbers mean? What's being represented? We still don't know that yet. All we know is that we're comparing months, so we're going through time, moving forward, and these values that keep rising up as we go up the x-axis. So I'm going to give you some information which you'll probably be given in a textbook or in a math problem. So here, these numbers represent the number of students on honor roll. So the number of students on honor roll. And here now we have something to compare the two axes to. In January, how many number of students were in honor roll? So that's what our graph is showing. So here in January, our line comes up and crosses both axes. So here we read January. You always want to read this way. So look at your x-axis first. And then move and see where the plots are pointed on the x-axis and where they correspond to the number line that's on the y-axis. So here in January, we had a dot right here. That means we could just imagine we did skip one number. So that's another thing. You have to determine how many values are being skipped. I could have went 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, and we would know that there are 5 little spaces in between each. But here, we have 0 to 2, so this tells me that's 1. 2 to 4, this little line in between would be about a 3. 4 to 6, in between would be about a 5. And so you just kind of have to read and see what's going on. Figure out the interval at which they're giving you the numbers. So let's keep on plotting these points. Here in February, we go up to that dot, move across, and where do they meet? Right at about 7. So far in January we had 3 students on honor roll. In February we had 7. So keep on going, go up to March, find our dot, and boom, what do we get? 10 people in March. And I'm going to go all the way across. Good, and just show the pattern of where we're looking. Again, the axis is where 2 lines meet. So not only is our lateral axis working and we're identifying where they meet, the y and the x-axis, but each one of these points, as we plot them, they intersect somewhere within the graph. So as we look and determine to evaluate what this graph is showing us in the information here, we already know what numbers these represent and what they're representing. They're representing the number of honor roll students in a given set of time. So here we have January at 3, February at 7, March at 10, April also at 10, and May at 12. So what we want to do to read this graph is connect these dots. Now we have a visual idea of how the number of students are excelling. So we know whether there are more students who are coming on to honor roll as time goes by, or whether that line is dipping. So if it was going down, we would see that as time went by, there were fewer and fewer students on honor roll. But we see with our graph that as time went by, our students are starting to excel. So more people are catching on. Here we have 2 months, they were the same amount. No big deal, no progress right there. There was no incline or decline in the number line. So here we spiked up between April and May. So you may get a question that goes, well, between April and May, how many more students were added to honor roll? Well, you do the math. How many students were on in April? 10. How many students were on in May? 12. Well, we'd be able to say there were 2 students added to honor roll between April and May. So again, these are statistics, getting information, being able to evaluate them, plot them on a graph, and give a visual representation of information. Go ahead, I hope you wrote this down, copied it down, did your little dots and dotted lines and your solid line to mark all the points, because we're going to move forward. We're going to do one more graph demonstration with some different information, but again, the same rules apply. You have to be able to read the graph and identify what it's showing and what information is given and what you can decide or decipher from the information given. So it's going to come down. And don't worry, if you didn't get it all, you can always rewind, watch it again, or simply write down both examples, and then you'll have 2 or one of whole one and half of another, but you will be able to put the pieces together. Okay? So one more graph. All right, this time we're going to have some names. Andy, Marcia, Joseph, and Lisa. All right, so I've got 4 people on the y-axis. And here I am drawing my x-axis. Now in the beginning, each time you draw a graph, go ahead and write this down until it's solid in your memory which axis represents which line. Okay, so keep on taking the same notes, that whatever you're given, write it down. Okay, don't let anything slip you by. So here we're going with our numbers along the x-axis this time. Here's 0, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, and 12. Again, you have to evaluate what numbers and what intervals these numbers are plotted in. So here again, we're going by 2s. I don't have the 1 there, but you can imagine it's there within this space from 0 to 2. And 2 to 4, 3 in there, 4 to 6, a 5 in there. So just keep that in mind. All right, so here on the bottom axis, we're going to have the number of candy sold in the month of April. So say these students had a fundraiser going at their school, and a teacher wants to evaluate how many candies each student sold. Well, we can put that on a graph and give a visual representation of what that progress looks like and what all the information entails. So let's say we're going to start with Lisa, and let's say within the month of April, Lisa sold 4 candies. Joseph sold 5. Marcia sold 8, and Andy sold 10. Okay, so very easy to plot the information once we know what these numbers represent and what we know what that y-axis represents. So again, we can draw a line and make a visual representation of the progress. Did it go up or did it decline as we read the progress of each student and their fundraising abilities? So again, the bottom line, the numbers represent the numbers of candies sold in the month of April, and these are our students. So here we can see Lisa sold 4, Joseph sold 5, Marcia sold 8, Andy sold 10. And again, I didn't do the dotted lines this time, but you can also do it to make sure you're in line with your number line. And you can again always bring it across and see where the points meet. Bring him across. Well, that shows our dot for Andy should be a little bit higher, but that's okay. The value is still the same. It changes the slope of our line. No big deal, but the value is still at 10. Okay, so again, an easy way to get a visual representation of data information. And this is so important because as we're moving forward, we're going to be doing a lot of evaluating. Based on what you see, what can we determine from that information? So here we are with graphing. Again, graphing is taking a plane, all this space, and plotting points based on information that's given, having a y-axis and an x-axis. So from now on, when you're looking at a graph, you need to determine what information is being shown and given, and what each axis represents, and that will lead you to answer any question that they have for you about a graph. We're going to move forward, so this is coming down. All right, so we've done graphing. Now we understand now how to read a graph and what those axes and the lines mean, and how to interpret information based on what the graph is showing. So we're going to move into the next lesson, which is adding, subtracting, multiplying and dividing positive and negative numbers. So this is something you're going to see when you start to get at about 6th, 7th grade elementary algebra. And we now discover there are more than just positive numbers. When we have a number line, we usually start at 0 and go all the way out into infinity. But now we have another side of that number line that we're dealing with. And these are called negative numbers. So any number to the left behind the 0 is called a negative number. And here we have a little minus sign beside each of these numbers to represent their negativity. So when we think about the negativity, we're thinking about it from a point of 0. So starting out at base level, neutral ground, we're either going forward and adding value, or we're moving behind the 0 and subtracting value. Okay, so here's where we get into deficit and debt. So let's say if you owed me $5, right, but you only had 3, well, you moving back and as the amount and value of what you owe me, so now instead of you owing me $5, you gave me 1, 2, and 3, now you only owe me 2. So you get to visually see how that works when you have a number line. So again, let's just really understand what's happening on the number line. Moving to the right, we have positive values adding to the number. Moving to the left, we're subtracting. Okay? So let's just give ourselves a little example. I'm going to use my black marker. Here I wrote the word goal because we should always know where we're going with this lesson. So here the main heading is positive and negative numbers, and our goal is to add and subtract the numbers, and then understand the rules of multiplying and dividing these numbers. Excuse my little, boom. Okay, so our heading, positive and negative numbers, and the goal is to add, subtract, multiply, and divide them. Now there are rules, okay, so this is here and where you need to stick to the rules. Don't try to get creative. Don't try to make up things and do your own thing. You need to write these rules down. You need to follow them in order to come to the right answers. So when we're dealing with adding, we have a separate set of rules. Dealing with subtracting, we have a separate set of rules, and so forth. So each one is going to have its own category. I'm going to give it to you one at a time. So again, I just want to visually keep this number line up to show you adding and subtracting positive and negative numbers. All right, so let's say we're here at -6, and we want to add, let's say 3. So how would you see that in an expression? We'd say -6 plus 3. That's how you would see it written. Now here's what you need to know. Whenever there is no sign, we automatically assume and know that the number is positive. If it's a negative number, it will always have this little dash and little minus sign, reminding you that it's on the negative side of the number line. So what is our rule for adding? Get ready to write. Rule for adding. Good. Here we have, if both the numbers are different, meaning one's positive and one's negative, we are going to subtract those numbers. So we're going to take the larger number and subtract the smaller number. Now, even though our function is addition, that is the rule for when you have different signs. So here, the rule for adding, different signs. You subtract the numbers, and this little symbol is representing the word numbers. So we subtract the numbers, and our answer takes the sign of the larger number. So forget whether it's negative or positive for a second. When we look at 6 and 3, 6 is the larger number, and 6 is carrying the negative sign. So our answer is going to have that negative sign in front of it. Now remember, that's just the rule when the signs are different and we're adding. Okay, so subtract the numbers, and the answer takes the sign of the larger number. And I'm going to step out of the way, give you a chance to write this all down. Here's our example, -6 plus 3, and our rule says that we subtract the numbers, 6 minus 3, and then the answer that we get takes the sign of the larger number. So again, I pointed out that 6 is still the larger number. It takes the sign, so I automatically know that because these signs are different and this one's larger, I'm going to put this little sign here that shows it's a negative number toward where my answer is going. The rule says subtract the numbers. 6 minus 3 is 3. Now we're going to play this out on the number line, and I'm going to show you how to use your number line with these functions. So here we start, -6. We come to -6 on our number line. Plus 3. So when we're adding 3, we're moving to the right. Remember when I said we're gaining value, we're moving to the right on this line. When we're taking value away and subtracting, we're moving to the left on the line. So here we have plus 3. So we're going to go from our 6 and we're going to go forward 3 spaces. 1, 2, 3. And look where we end up at our answer. -3, -3. What just happened? We started at -6 and we added a value of 3. So here, if you owed me $6, you were in the hole in -$6 and you gave me 3, well, now you only owe me 3. Okay, so you're working your way out of the hole, moving that way. So again, remember that rule. When you're adding and the signs are different, you're going to take the sign of the larger number, move it over to your answer space, and actually subtract. Find the difference between these two numbers. Okay, hope you're writing it down. We're going to move forward. I'm going to erase the bottom part right here for our adding. And I'm just going to erase this little section so we can use our number line again and do another example. And that was -3. All right, so let's go for one more problem. Let's say we were at -8. So there's the first portion of our math problem. -8 plus 10. Now again, we're still using the addition function. And what's our rule? The larger number takes the sign over. So here, which is the larger number? Forget the 8 being negative. Is 8 larger than 10 or 10 larger than 8? Our answer is 10. It's the larger number. So that means our answer is going to be positive. Now I put that little plus sign just to remind myself that I'm moving to the positive side of the number line. Okay, and even when you don't see a plus, we know that that number is still positive. So again, we take the difference between the two numbers. The difference means we're subtracting. 10 minus 8, or the greater number minus the greater number minus the smaller number. And our answer, the difference between these two numbers is 2, sorry. And here we are, +2. Now let's watch that happen on the number line. Here we are at -8, and we're going to go to the right 10 spaces. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Can you see how that happens? So we're moving across the number line. We were in the whole 8, we added 10, and now we have 2 left over. Okay? Adding using positive and negative numbers. I hope you took good notes on this. It's going to come up, it is going to come around. So use these rules. You cannot get around the rules. Remember the rule, adding and subtracting negative and positive numbers. The answer takes the number or the sign to the largest number, and you find the difference between the two numbers. Okay, you got lots more to learn. I hope you had a great session this time. Again, this is Maria Betts, Math with Maria on Cast Down Imagination TV. Thanks for tuning in.